Well, hello, my friends. We meet again. It has been a while. Where should we begin? 2 minutes and 49 seconds. That's all it takes for Necrophagus to simply melt your face off. 2 minutes and 49 seconds is also all the time that Necrophagus needed to write some of the catchiest and most memorable technical death metal of all time. So, today in this episode, we will go through the song and just see why it's so good. How Mohamed Sweetchmez and crew managed to make such a memorable, catchy, frantic, and frenzied piece of music. We'll look at the structure, riffs, and some of the music theory behind the song. So, without further ado, let us begin. This is the Stabwound Deep Dive on Metal Masterpieces. So, for this video, I had a chat with Brandon from Faye and Stream, known as the Stabwound Sunday guy.
Do you know what day it is?
Stabwound Sunday.
Perhaps the biggest Necrophagus fan on YouTube, to help me out and digest the song a little bit here. Necrophagus Stabwound. Oh, actually, why don't you just introduce yourself first of all?
Totally. Yeah, so I'm Brandon Mullen, or aka Fan Stream, and I'm just a massive Necrophagus fan. And I basically kind of have the mentality of study the best and just, forget about the rest kind of thing. I know it's a little close-minded, but I absolutely love Necrophagus. I've been playing it for a long, long time, and especially Death as well, but Necrophagus especially.
Yeah, we love Death here too, so yeah.
On the Stabwound front, basically it's a tech death pop song. It's extremely memorable. It's got everything you need to know about how to grab a great song, great flow and feel and writing. Drums are perfect. Everything is just amazing. The bass is really good too. And as a player, it really, really flows a lot better than the Onset of Putrefaction stuff. You can tell that Mohamed was on a completely other level in terms of compositions, but he was like 27 when he wrote it, or like 25 or something like that. So he was not like some... Yeah, he was like a kid when he did all this stuff. It's crazy.
Now, the song at first listen really just sounds like a complete whirlwind of riffs, blast beats and gutturals and solos, but upon further inspection, the structure of the song becomes clear. The song revolves around the uses of counterpoint and motifs and uses these expertly to create a catchy and memorable song despite the chaos of riffs and the blistering speed around it.
But anyway, so Stabwound, there's a lot of amazing riffs in it. Now, it's not like groovy riffs, but they're really fast, they're very flowy, but really memorable. So my favorite part about it is like his use of counterpoint. So the best I can describe it is that when you listen to Necrophagus, if you really think about it on the left and right channel, certain things pop out when other things dip. And there's an example of that in this riff here where it's kind of at the end of the chorus where it's like... So this little pulling off to open zero, you listen to the song, you can hear that, right? You can hear that part in it, whereas the other guitar goes... And it just sticks, like it's kind of more straight, but Mohamed's part dips out.
Yes.
One of my favorite parts for sure.
Yeah, that's very sort of like a very classical movement to it, especially so when it ends on those diminished chords. I think what are those two diminished chords? The
his, and then the Christian's part. It's amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we get into the meat here, I just want to say that I was just accepted into the YouTube membership program. So if you want to support me and my work, help me get videos out faster, vote on songs to do deep dives on, get extra channel specific emotes and access to a Discord server, and see videos earlier, then consider joining and supporting me. Thank you all very much for watching though. I really appreciate every single one of you. Essentially, the whole song is built upon this motif. This E to C sharp pull-off can be heard throughout the song and is used to essentially anchor a lot of the more chaotic and fast riffs. Your ear immediately catches it. It's a hook. Pay attention to the song and see just how many times you can hear this riff being used. It sounds like a Stabwound, like dana, 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 like it sounds like a sonic knife fight.
There's one other kind of piece of it is that the song doesn't have very many riffs. I know it sounds like it to the listener, especially to the non-musician, it's like there's a lot going on, but really a Stabwound is one of the first riffs I teach when I teach guitar lessons and stuff. And if someone's wanting to learn a full Necrophagus song, I recommend that one. And very memorable. Not a lot of convoluted riffing going on. There's other songs they have that have convoluted riffing, but not this one.
And again, he is totally right here. The song, while sounding very complex, is really just a combination of 6 different distinct parts which get repeated and used throughout the song. This is more or less as tight, surgical, precise, and catchy that a technical death metal song can possibly be. And I don't really think it's too far of a stretch to call this a tech death pop song. So here I've broken down the song and split it into its repeating parts and color coded them so it's easier to see. Now, as you can see when looking at this, when it's been broken down and simplified into its constituent parts, it really is structured more or less like a pop song. Our brains love repetition, which is why the song works so well. So anyways, we have an intro section, or section 1, chorus section, or we can call section 2, with and without vocals, Muhammad's lead motif section we will call section 3 here. Then the bass solo and Christian's solo motif lead pattern is section 4. Then we have the verses, which is section 5. Then we have the bridge, or the main solo section, which we call section 6. There's also an outro, but it's so short that it basically doesn't count. Essentially, every part besides the intro, bridge, and outro is reused multiple times. You hear the same motifs and counterpoints used, you hear the same leads and riffs. It makes it much easier for us to digest the song, and this is extremely important with such dense and fast and technical music. By breaking it down like this into its 6 essential parts, the song begins to look a lot more approachable and manageable. If you listen to a lot of the other Necrophagus songs, most of them are structured in a very similar way. It's controlled chaos. This incredibly strong songwriting is what really makes Necrophagus stand out to me in the sea of other technical death metal bands. Added to this is that this is almost the same structure that Death uses in a lot of their songs, which I talked about on this video, which you can check out after this one. It's so crazy how much is packed into this song that's not even 3 minutes long. Necrophagus, they somehow managed to make, like you said, like a tech death pop song. It's like the structure of a pop song, just with crazy tech death riffs and blast beats. You know?
Absolutely. And then a couple points to that, which is the mix is extremely important. So Christoph Brandes, who did this, and again, everyone was in their 20s when they did this album. Like, they're just kids. It's amazing. So Christoph Brandes, what we made sure, and Muhammad basically co-produced this thing, but the mix of Epitaph is extremely simple and extremely clear, right? It's just 2 guitars left and right, bass, middle, vocals, drums. Like, simple. There's not what I find with modern technical music is that the mix is so intense and it's so pushed that it's almost, the mix itself is technical and overwhelming. Whereas Epitaph, the mix breathes. It doesn't oversaturate. It doesn't overpush. So the mix allows the music to speak for itself, which I really like. And then to the other point where I had to do with Death, I apologize. The pop, the composing element to Necrophagus is it has almost pop elements because that's what Chuck did. Death, if you take a listen to like Death's like peers, right? Their writing is not even as close to as poppy as his. Like when you listen to Leprosy, there is like full on hooks there, like just hooks everywhere, right?
Dude, absolutely.
Whereas can be confused with just all brute and just like there's no hooks. It's not the case with Death stuff, and Muhammad carried that on the best out of anyone in my opinion. So it goes from Chuck creating death metal and really refining it to then leaving death metal behind and creating basically melodic death metal, and then Muhammad carried that on and made technical death metal, but it all comes from the same strand, which is very, very hooky stuff that is memorable. That's why Necrophagus and Death are the greats.
100% agree. And I totally agree with you. Symbolic came out in, I think it was early 1995. Slaughter of the Soul came out fall 1995. Death invented melodic death metal. That settles the debate right there, bro.
Exactly, right? Exactly. Chuck was always a step ahead of, or more steps ahead of the industry. Muhammad also, right? But you know, the fate kind of decided where it was like too good. I guess we couldn't have more Necrophagus, but it's hard to top Epitaph.
Playing on the song is a world-class ensemble of musicians, with the almighty Mohamed Sweetchamez on guitar and vocals. Christian Munza is the other guitarist in the band, and I hesitate to name one of them the lead guitarist here, as they almost equally share lead duties. On drums is Hannes Grossman, with his blazing speed and near robotic precision, and on the bass is the equally impressive Stefan Femes. Now, normally here, I would go through the song, part by part, and then finish with the lyrics, but today, let us first take a look at the lyrics, as they're not that many, so we might as well. Invisible blades penetrate, whereas stab wounds are not detectable. Stab wound. The blade that stabs a back, unsuspecting, forms the symbolic stab wound. There is no shield to protect from attacks led by the ones one used to trust. Stab wound. The blade that stabs a back, unsuspecting, forms the symbolic stab wound. So really, this song is only 4 stanzas, 2 of which repeat. It's lyrically a very, very simple song. It's a song about metaphorical stab wounds caused by someone that we used to trust. In other words, being betrayed or backstabbed by someone. There may not be a physical wound, but it still feels like you've been stabbed. That white-hot pain of betrayal. And to me, this white-hot, searing pain of betrayal and all the other emotions that come from it, confusion, anger, bitterness, disbelief, among others, are what the song is attempting to portray in musical form. And Mohamed and company really do a great job in putting these emotions into sonic form here. So the song starts off with a blast, literally. No messing around, just straight to the riffs, which is how I like it. Just give me the riffs right away, you know what I mean?
Another super sick part, which is right at the start of the song. So drum fill kicks in. Mohammed's part does a pinch harmonic here. Now here, I'm going to get like super in detail, like as a guitar player.
Go for it, absolutely. That's what we're here for.
So there's a pinch harmonic here, which is the major third. Now I'm not like a theory nut, but I know enough at least to do that. And so Christian's part goes, and Mohamed is going just brilliant. So he's matching a pinch with a higher octave zone. It's incredible.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because when you do a pinch harmonic, essentially, right, you're getting rid of the bass fundamental note, and all that's left is a higher harmonic. So it's interesting that he combines that with the lower or the higher note as well. That's cool. I didn't even notice that. Here in section 1, the song is played at around 240 beats per minute, just absolutely screaming fast. The opening drum fill just explodes and just puts you right into the song right away. And the first notes that you hear played on the guitars and bass is that E to C sharp motif, which is played unmuted first and then palm muted while oscillating back and forth between those 2 notes quickly. This muted part I find very interesting and catchy, like you can almost sing it, in and out insanely quick. In fact, the whole song just sounds like a sonic knife fight to me, like blades flying around and cuts being did. It just sounds to me like a sonic knife fight. And that motif, like that probably looks weird on camera, but that's what I hear, right? It's a stab wound, and that motif we will hear throughout the song as well. Now, to declare the song to be in a key and a mode is largely a fool's errand. However, I am a fool, so I would say that this song is in the key of D, and maybe mostly you would say that's in D harmonic minor, as that C sharp is played repeatedly, and it really gives the song a somewhat classical and dark sound to it. But as the song progresses through, we'll see all different modes being played here. So, basically it's D harmonic minor and D Phrygian and D natural minor throughout the song, more or less. And another notable thing to mention here is that right after that E to C sharp pedal, we get an alternate picked riff which sees them pedal a D octave. However, all 3 guitarists are playing a different D, so essentially they're covering 4 octaves of Ds here, which is a notable feat. And I mentioned it briefly before, but this riff here is essentially the chorus riff, as well as the main sort of grounding motif and idea that you'll hear throughout the song. And that introduction of the E to C sharp motif, which we hear just right away, it's the first thing you hear, will be used throughout the rest of the song. It sets up and primes the listener very deliberately and purposefully. The band then moves on into the section part of section 1, which sees the drums back off in intensity a little bit as the guitars play a riff that is somewhat reminiscent of what'll be played in the verses. This sort of brief pause in blast beats gives us a moment to gather ourselves, and in a way, this sort of push and pull of intense moments with crazy blast beats before backing off or having silent parts really allows the song to breathe very well. You know, it's not just blasting throughout the whole song, you know, it breathes, it's sort of organic. It gives a listener time to take it in and soak it in a little bit, catch their breath, I guess you could say. Then they move to the first chorus section, which is without vocals for the first time they play it. And this we can call section 2. Again, that E to C sharp motif is the prominent focal point here. And worthy of note is the pause in the middle of this section. Exactly the same as how we will hear it during the chorus, but with vocals. The pause again allows you to breathe out and for you to sort of catch your breath amongst this chaos. And they will use this pause very well when vocals are introduced.
Yeah, like if you take a look, Muhammad is on the right earphone on Epitaph. So if you take a listen to that right earphone, the amount of pinch harmonics is insane, and they're super clean, of course. And then my favorite part here is that when Christian does this part, Muhammad does this. So those were triplet eighth notes, and it speeds up.
Yeah.
Muhammad actually slows down. So he does triplet quarters.
Oh, interesting.
Right, and that's why it gives it that, like, in this part of the song, it just has this morphing sound. And then on the bass drum, I believe he's doing triplet sixteenths, I believe. Maybe it's just triplet eighths. But anyway, the drums speed up and there's no snare drum involved. So it makes it feel spacey for that brief moment. That's why it's a very cool part of the song.
The end of this chorus section is extremely classically influenced. If we were to look at these chords on a piano roll with both the guitar and bass notes mapped out, we see that the band uses an imperfect cadence, I guess you could say, to create this sense of resolve. Although they leave out some interesting notes, we essentially have a major 5 to diminished 7 to that minor 1 chord, which is a very progressive and very classical sounding, you know, resolving progression. With these chords essentially being A over E, C sharp diminished over E with no 5th, and then a D minor with no 3rd. And so here's the progression as the band plays it. And here is the progression with the full chords, no omissions. You know, I spent a lot of time trying to decipher what was going on here, and I think this is what they are implying. You know, it feels very resolute and final, like the grand ending to a symphony. As that diminished 7 chord has just so much tension, which is finally resolved on that huge D5 power chord that follows. You know, it's like dent, dent, dent. You know, great stuff, and Necrophagist has just interesting chords like this sort of all over the place, but we will get back to the section shortly once we get to the vocal part of the song. Now, as we move into what I titled Muhammad's solo motif section, or section 3 just to be simple, this is where the song really becomes something very, very special. And despite the perceived resolution from the previous cadence ending, the song does not end. In fact, it gets busier and changes modes, this time to D Phrygian dominant. The movement from the D5 power chord to the E flat 5 chord sounds just so huge and it's just so devastatingly heavy. I just love they just come in, it's like, oh man, it's just Excellent. It's interesting as the chords that they were implying before imply this resolution, but it really just brings us to a new section. So it's almost like a little head fake there. It's really, really cool. There's also part of the song that I always thought was very interesting in the fact that that first little solo where it sort of slows down and breathes a little bit. They play that almost solo the exact same twice. It's almost sort of like its own verse in a way, right? It's almost like the guitar is speaking, or like almost like its own chorus or its own hook. And it's just
Yeah.
such one of the greatest little solos of all time. It's just excellent, bro. I love it.
It's a hook, right? So Muhammad made it so that it doesn't go overboard. It's shredding that is memorable. Like this right here, that's a hook. Like
Yes.
everyone knows that if they listen to Necrophagus. That right there is like if you were to compile all of like the feel of Necrophagus solos, like that piece right there is. That's critical, right? Everyone knows
Absolutely.
it, and so there's a lot of solos that I've heard that shred way faster, way crazier, zero memorability, zero, right?
Dude, totally.
This is not like that. It's just a hook, right? As you said, right? And that solo is so strong that it almost passes by as almost not a solo, right? It almost feels like just a riff.
Yeah, dude, 100%, bro. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And the
totally.
fact
And
that they play it twice too adds to that for sure.
his solo there, extremely strong stylistically of Muhammad, which is a little bit more in the box, a little bit more Ingve-ish, a little bit more Bach-ish, right? Which is that's all he studied. Muhammad never went to school or studied music like academically. It was always about what's Ingve Malmsteen doing, and that's pretty much it. And then of course he's a freaking genius, so he can extrapolate further than we ever could.
Most bands would simply have this as a solo section. However, Necrophagus repeats this incredibly catchy solo section twice, and only 45 seconds after it's played the first time. So really, it's just basically a riff. You know, just absolutely fantastic stuff. And one of my favorites in the song, he's just so catchy, you know. It's just a hook. Like Brandon mentioned too, it's just such a defined hook that your ear catches right away. And therefore, why not follow up a great solo section with a bass solo and then with another guitar solo as well? You know, this is tech death, right? We're now into section 4. The bass solo is really, really cool here. I love how the drums begin before the bass solo starts. It sort of leads us into it a little bit. It's very, very cool, especially that contrast with the huge, you know, definite starting of the previous solo section. The band essentially here just have 3 lead guitarists, if you think about it, with the bassist doing a whole bunch of different stuff all throughout the song and playing just an amazing solo here as well. And another thing to mention here is that the chords that Christian and Muhammad play under the bass solo, they essentially just are the most evil and deranged sounding chords they could have possibly played. They play a G minor major 9 with a sharpened 5th, then a D followed by an F sharp minor and then an F minor chord. Super evil, especially that minor 2 minor chord just a half step down. That's such an evil sounding interval that lots of black metal bands use as well. Just sounds just so menacing. I love it. This is then followed up with another little solo section, this time from Christian, although because this is Necrophagus, you know, this is simply just almost like another riff here. Very interesting use of counterpoint here as well.
And then what else? Christian solo, which another important part about this is that this is the first time that there's going to be another guitarist featured in a big way on an album, and Christian's the next guitar player. So having him stylistically have a solo there that is unmistakably his, because Christian's style is not Muhammad's. It's way bubblier. It's just he uses different notes, different feel, lots of tapping.
They will also use this section later on in the song. However, interestingly enough, here in the beginning, they play section 3 and 4 back to back. Yet later on, they separate the two with the bridge solo section in between them. It really is a cool choice to split them up, as one leads us from the chorus into something else, and the other takes us into the verse section, or to section 5, I guess you'd call it. So it's an interesting way that they lead and direct the song with these sort of solo sections. Very, very cool. And another cool little detail is that the bass walks down into the D minor chord right at the end before the verse. It's like putting this neat little bow onto this amazing section. Such diverse rhythms, chords, and drumming. Absolutely amazing work here, truly. Thus, the band then moves into section 5, which we will simply call the verse section. The first appearance of vocals in the song at nearly 45 seconds into a 2-minute and 49-second song is really a notable feat. You know, it's essentially a third of the way into the song. We're just getting the first vocals now, right? No even, or anything like that. You know, Necrophagus and Death are very similar in that they don't ever do those sort of, I guess you can call them just screaming with no words. There is always words that they're trying to say. Muhammad's vocals are very, very deep and powerful. His death growls are approaching guttural territory, and depending on the vowel sound that he uses, almost sound to be somewhat close to a pig squeal. You know, especially on the word stab wound, he sort of rises intensity, right? It's like, stab wound. It sort of almost kind of squeals at the end there. It's very cool. And despite how low his vocals are, he still enunciates his words very, very well. You are able to understand what he's saying in his vocals, which is something you can't really say about a lot of other, really low guttural vocalists. I love how he begins the phrase with the word invisible as he holds the in during that brief pause. It almost sounds like he's winding up the band before him. It's just great. I love that. It's excellent. This verse riff here also contains that E to C sharp motif, but here underneath the vocals, they really emphasize some of the more quote unquote ugly intervals in this D harmonic minor scale, including both the flattened second and flattened fifth intervals. Combined with the relentless blasts and deep growling vocals, it really just gives these verses an incredibly intense and vicious sound. Like we're hearing how the invisible blades of betrayal carve out these mental stab wounds. Great stuff. In fact, during this section, I think they play 10 out of the 12 notes in the Western music scale. It's just crazy, man. The verse then leads us right into the chorus riff, but with vocals this time. It's a simple chorus, one word. Stab wound. Muhammad does an incredible job here on the vocals as he holds the growl and word out and increases its volume and pitch slightly before ending at the same time that the chorus riff hits its first pause, leaving only that reverb tail from the vocals to fill in that space left by the instruments. I love it. It sort of just builds in intensity, right? The verses build, chorus builds into that word stab wound before it's just cut off, right? Oh man, it's just excellent. I love that chorus. And this is just fantastic songwriting. Even the first time you hear the song, your ear catches onto it right away. It's very, very catchy, a hook worthy of a tech death pop song. This is aided by the fact that now we have heard the chorus riff already once before, and that we have already heard that E to C sharp motif several times by now. Therefore, when you add in the increasing intensity in vocals, it's just, all these factors really just prime your ears and make it clear that yes, this is the main hook of the song. You can probably even understand the word stab wound from the first time around, if you read the title of the song while you were listening to it. And how often can you say that you understand the lyrics of gutturals in a song, the first time? Really, it's just truly genius songwriting here. Bravo to the band. I love it. It's just so fantastic. I can't say enough about this chorus section, really. And so the chorus riff ends on that same A over E chord that we saw during the transition from the first chorus to section 3. Although this time they don't play the following C sharp diminished over E, so there's no resolution to this 5 chord, as right after they go back to the second verse with that same E to C sharp motif, which skirts around the tonic of D. So by doing this, it keeps the momentum going both rhythmically as well as tonally. Really, really cool songwriting here. It's just a very good little touch that sort of continues and lets you know that the verse has not ended. They play the verses and chorus once again before moving back into section 3. This time they do the whole 5-7-1 resolution, which resolves and wraps up the first verse and chorus section of the song nicely. You know, the first time the chorus is played with vocals, it doesn't resolve. Second time, it does resolve and they move on to something different. Very, very cool. And here they play section 3 again in its entirety. I mean, you know, why not? It's just such a cool and catchy little lead section, and Muhammad's playing is just flawless. It's fantastically heavy and such a treat to listen to, especially the sort of held chords. It's such a contrast from the continual blast beats and fast picking of the previous section. Although this time, like I mentioned earlier, they don't move into section 4, the bass solo. Instead, they move into section 6, or what you could call the bridge of the song, bridge or main solo section. Now we move into Christian Munz's main solo section, which sees the band sort of drastically slow down in tempo to around 115 beats per minute. Again, despite the brevity of the song, it feels like it breathes and allows us to catch our breath, and this brief respite from the unrelenting 200 plus beats per minute blasting is needed, and it's a very nice change of pace. It's a very nice contrast too. And underneath the solo here, we get a band playing a very death-inspired rhythm underneath, going from the tonic chord of D to the flattened second of E flat, then to the major third down to the minor third. And you see this, you know, major third to the flattened second to the minor third to the root all the time in Death's music as well. He really likes that major third sound in like a D minor sound. It really just sounds very evil and menacing, and it sort of adds a lot of tonal ambiguity and really allows the soloist to go crazy over top with all their different intervals. You know, it really just sounds evil and very, very menacing. Very, very cool. And maybe a slight, you know, tip of the hat to Death there as well. Christian's solo is excellent. It really focuses a lot on that major 7th harmonic minor sound that the rest of the song uses quite a bit. It makes full use of the entire fretboard, going up and down the neck several times. Really just an excellent solo, and we get brief flourishes of harmony as well. Necrophagists usually diligently stick to the 2 guitars and a bass sound, so the addition of an extra guitar for harmonies really stands out here. And it is this strategic use of extra production which really sets Necrophagus apart. You know, it's the restraint that they show. Sure, you could have harmonized the entire solo, but then would the harmonized sections have the same standout effect? You know, really well done stuff, and the album Epitaph is full of these little flourishes which are really very interesting and keep the sound novel and exciting. You know, they do a lot with sort of solos sort of echoing out and fading away. It's really, really cool and very interesting. You don't really hear other bands do it. It's very cool. I love it. Then as the solo finishes up and its delay and reverb tails are still sounding off into the background, we move right back into section 4 with the bass solo. It's just such an interesting move to go from one solo, which you've already heard once before, to another completely new and novel solo in a completely different tempo and feel, and then to sandwich that between another 2 solos of which we've already heard. It's like a solo sandwich. It's such an interesting way to write music. I absolutely adore it. And it takes about a minute of the song, and it's just well worth it. It just sounds so good. Thus, after section 4 repeats, they go back through the verse and chorus before ending the song. And just to touch on the ending of the song, rather than ending on that same 5-7-1 resolution like they have done before, instead they play that same 5 chord of A over E, then an E flat power chord, flattened second, before landing and resolving on that open D5 power chord, which is also accentuated by a huge reverb-drenched snare shot. Now, I love this ending. It doesn't give that same complete final resolution that the earlier progression does. Instead, it almost sounds like the band is out of energy. It sort of feels like it kind of runs out of steam and ends. You know, maybe it could keep going, but the band's tired. You know, it's just very interesting. It kind of resolves, it kind of doesn't. It's just such an interesting way to end the song. And if they didn't have that huge snare shot too, it would be much more ambiguous, but maybe that's the point, right? It's ambiguous because these mental, emotional stab wounds from betrayal don't go away, right? They still linger and they don't go away. You know, the white hot anger and bitterness might feel, but you always still have that betrayal wounds on you, right? So, yeah. And thus Stabwound ends as suddenly as it started, leaving you standing there wondering, you know, what in God's name have I just heard? A true metal masterpiece and easily one of the greatest metal songs ever put to tape. Absolute world-class musicianship and songwriting. And yeah, what more can you say, man? Just go listen to it. It's just excellent song. I love it. Make sure to check out Brandon Mullen's channel, Fey and Stream. He does a lot of death stuff too, and consider getting some guitar lessons from him. I know I am. So expect some more guitar content from me, as well as remember to like and comment of what song you'd like to see next. I've been Varvis. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers.